Thank you very much, Bjorn, and thanks so much to GoEd for the opportunity to present at this wonderful conference. Right, just before we start, an early picture of Hobart. Hobart was actually a whaling port a couple of centuries ago. That picture's only about 5 or 6 years ago. Our marine labs are right there. So CSIRO, government agency, about 6,000 scientists and support staff, of which 600 are in the marine environment. A lot of climate and fisheries research, but also a little bit of omega-3. So again, major business now in Hobart, no longer a whaling port, tourism during the summer season. All right, just before we start, in terms of the history, I know North America, Hobart, capital city of Tasmania, Tasmanian devil. I just really did want to show you the real thing, okay? There's more Tasmanian devils than there are Tasmanians. Okay, in terms of what I'll cover today, a bit of a researcher overview in terms of our father figures and long-term researchers, a bit of detail on long-chain omega-3 usage and awareness in Australia, some Australian innovation through a small company called Clover Corporation, omega lipids with tuna oil, various data on Australian seafood, which have relevance obviously to the consumers, the current status with Australian aquaculture, which is a bit of an issue globally, a little bit of environmental work. You can use omega-3s in environmental studies. The marine biologists are liking to do that. A fair bit today on our, it's been a 10 come 15 year project for me in terms of this, attempting to address the sustainability issue, and that's obtaining land plants with omega-3, long-chain omega-3s, that's EPA and DHA. We've got some pretty exciting results there. That's a partnership between CSIRO, our commercial partner Newseed, and the Grains Research and Development Corporation. And then I'll finish up with the little bit of detail on the Omega-3 Centre, which is the Australian equivalent of GoEd. All right, in terms of the early history, I've just listed here people that have been in the omega-3 game in Australia for 30, 40 or more years. Probably the father figures in Australia would be Andy Sinclair, who elegant work on brain and general nutrition. Andy has worked with Michael, as we heard on day one. Bob Gibson, again with Maria Macready's. Bob has just done wonderful work in the infant nutrition area and was the Alexander Leaf Award winner a couple of weeks ago at ISFAL. And in terms of CSIRO, just wanted to mention Alan Green. He was, got our long-chain omega-3 in land plants project underway. And then down the bottom, just Hamish Drummond has been the driver in the early years with Clover Corporation, omega lipids with tuna oil products. All right, just where are we at in Australia? So Australia, again, I've seen a number of graphs put up by others at the meeting. We are quite low in long-chain omega-3 consumption. We've snuck it up in the last decade or so, and we're still under 200 milligrams. In 2006, our National Health and Medical Research Council came out with those recommendations. So 610 milligrams for males, 430 for women. Again, averages at about 500 milligrams per day. And again, we're clearly way behind that. The most common way in Australia these days, we are not big fish eaters, but most people, or many people, are taking supplements, just typically the standard 18, 12 oils. All right, in terms of a little bit of detail on the Australian market, again, with our supplements, fish oils are still dominated by the 1812s. It has climbed the ladder from a decade or so ago. It was not even in the top 20, reached the top 10, I think, about 8 years ago, and it's now in the number one seller at $200 million. That's fish oil. Triglyceride concentrates are gaining traction, but again, they're generally regarded as too expensive at the moment. Liquid fish oil and krill oil are currently sort of gaining traction as well. Major outlets in Australia are through pharmacies. not so many health food stores. The issue in Australia, like many countries, seafood consumption is low, even though we're surrounded by the sea. 9 out of 10 children do not eat seafood. So, and again, in our case, even though there has been some functional food developments, there is still low acceptance in that area. All right, fish oil capsules in Australia. We've done this survey about 20 years ago, and this was one done a couple of years ago. Previously, it was largely the 18-12 oils. We've now, again, about a third of the oils of that category. We've got a lot of enriched products now on the market, and then various other oils. All right. Down the bottom, we've done a sort of a costing for the average consumer to take 500 milligrams a day via these various supplements. The 18-12 oils up the top. Again, the average consumer can get, for the cost of $20 to $80 a year, can get their 500 milligrams a day. Enriched oils, obviously it goes up, and then the other oils varies between $130 to $2,000. That $2,000 per annum was actually a krill oil product. So the krill oil products are still quite expensive in Australia, so that's the krill oil there. All right, in terms of byproduct oils, we've, again, over a 20, 30-year period, our group's done a lot of work on different byproduct oils. The only one that has gone commercial is the tuna oil there. So with the 25% DHA and about 8% EPA. Various other oils are available, but again, just hasn't been the uptake by the industry to take those sorts of products through to market. We have a pest species in our waterways, European carp. European carp is quite low in the long-chain omega-3s. Industry was interested in doing something with that species, but again, it wasn't a good one to work with. All right, Clover Corporation, in terms of with the tuna oil, we worked with them 20 years or so ago, and that's just a chromatogram up the top, TLC-FID, but that's the raw tuna oil as a byproduct of the canning process. We purified it just to demonstrate to Clover that we can get it into the purified form. And again, Clover now is a leading innovator with the tuna oil products, and in particular with their various microencapsulation technologies, which has seen the oil then go into various functional foods, which again, I think the tip-top red got a mention on day one. All right, in terms of Australian seafood, the fishing industry, as they became aware that, in terms of the long-chain omega-3 consumption is low, our group was commissioned to put out, we surveyed 300 species over a decade period. We have put out 2 guides, so details on the oil and fatty acid composition and long-chain omega-3s on Australian seafood. And that data has been incorporated into various nutritional databases, which is then into a package called NutTab. And again, the nutritionists use that for performing nutritional surveys. That's just average data, a bit dangerous on the right-hand side, but that's your typical average seafood. Australian species, our waters are nutrient poor, quite low in the long-chain omega-3s, therefore a lot of white flesh species. But 60 milligrams is designated as good source in Australia, with 30 milligrams as source. So it's only the seafood, obviously, as we all know, but again, most of our species are quite low. All right, and that's just showing some of the data. So there's that average there in the middle, 235 to 50. One species during our survey, slender tuna, enormous levels of long-chain omega-3s. People just wanted to get their hands on that species. It's actually a bycatch, very low availability. It's a bycatch of some of our other tuna species, so there wasn't much around. I'll come back to this, the farm species, excellent sources. This data is now about 10 or 15 years old, but the farm species back then were excellent sources of the long-chain omega-3s. All right. Again, a lot of consumers wanted to know, well, what happens with various processing, smoking, cooking and the like. So we did, for a number of species, just compared the different cooking techniques. And again, just to assure the consumers, cooking does not degrade the EPA and the DHA. Again, interestingly there, the deep fry, this was obviously an oil rich in the omega-6s. You can add very high amounts of the omega-6s with your cooking techniques. And again, the seafood industry used that sort of information to put out information over the last couple of decades on the good oil in Australian seafood to help promote it. All right, in terms of aquaculture, so Australia was a little bit slow, but a decade ago we started getting messages from North America and elsewhere in terms of, but what about farms? Fish do not have the long-chain omega-3s, and that's Andrew Stoll from the Harvard Medical School just quoting him there in 2002. All right, and again, that's some Norwegian data. Farm fish, this made an Australian newspaper. Farm fish failed the omega-3 trials. This was fish that was fed a mixture of fish oil and canola oil, and then fed to the consumers, measured various blood parameters. Blood parameters not so good in the fish that have been fed the vegetable oil. All right, at the time, that was our data through that decade or so period. Again, Australian fish still around 2,000 milligrams per serve. So that's excellent source type numbers. And again, we were at that stage still using fish oil in our diets. So we were a little bit slow catching up with the rest of the world. So the farm fish were actually better sources than the wild fish in Australia. All right, we've continued looking at farm fish through this time. So there's that, this is the data now. So fish oil in aquaculture in Australia is being replaced by other oils. So we have decreased over the last decade. The content has decreased by 30 to 50%. All right, our main oil in the diet these days is chicken fat. All right, 75% chicken fat, 25% fish oil. And interestingly enough, the omega-3, omega-6 ratio is now, for the first time this year, is under 1. So typically, wild fish, this is farmed salmon a decade or so ago, the ratio, marine fish 5 or more, ratio there 7. Okay, and it's just gradually been coming down as the proportion of chicken fat in the oil has gone up. So in terms of the way forward, we can obviously change our feeding strategies. You can put them onto finishing diets just before they're getting ready for market. We can obviously use other types of oils or biomass, single-cell biomass or krill. In our case, that's what's really been driving our development of sustainable land plant sources. And that's what I'll move on to now. So we've heard through the conference with all the experts telling us that the long-chain omega-3s, they're really essential for human health. They're also essential for the marine fish. Global catches are either static or in some cases declining. And we should remember as well, fish don't actually make the long-chain omega-3s, it's the microalgae. So, and again, hence we brought together a project team. Well, the idea was from the mid to late 90s. The team came together after some preliminary work in the late 90s in 2003, aiming to isolate the omega-3 genes from the microalgae and transfer them to crop plants. The image down there is the microalgae that we can't see into canola. All right, so we fortunately at CSIRO, we had the largest collection of microalgae in the southern hemisphere, 800 species and strains. Again, these are across the different phyla of the microalgae, different colours, red algae, green algae and the like. And obviously the ones on the right-hand side having the DHA, so they're the ones that we have been targeting. So again, with that collection available, we're able to, if you like, pick the species that were the most efficient in their conversions. All right, and then this is really the 15-year research history in one slide. So again, there's the land plants. There's the genes from the microalgae. So it's a multi-step pathway coming down from ALA down to EPA and DHA into the crop plants. And that's what our project team has been all about. So I'll present some data now. So in 2005, we were the first group that put DHA into a land plant. So there's your typical land plant with, again, 0 EPA and DHA. Our first results, we had 2.5% EPA and 0.5% of DHA in a Arabidopsis, which is a plant model. So we did put the champagne in the fridge. All right, those levels have been upped, and again, this is data from a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, I can't give you current data, but these are profiles now of, this is tobacco leaves, the triglyceride fraction, but again, profiles now noting the EPA and the DHA. Again, EPA and the DHA at levels that are approaching what you see in fish oils. Still a little bit of, or substantial L-linoleic acid in these. We are decreasing the levels there. Key points to make, the intermediates, no omega, or hardly any omega-6 intermediates, and quite low levels of the omega-3 intermediates as well. The only difference between the top and the bottom, that was a different delta-5 elongase from here to here. So again, we've got a number of genes available, so depending on whether we want a DHA oil versus a EPA-DHA mixture, we have different genes available. All right, and that's just a summary of various groups globally, all right, in terms of where the progress is at. Let's ignore the arachidonic acid in the context of this talk. But again, a number of groups have put EPA into various crop plants. So the highest we've achieved so far is 25% EPA, and we're the only group with substantial levels of the DHA so far. So yeah, it's been quite a journey so far, but we're very happy with where the progress is at. And in terms of the sustainability message that's been coming through for the previous 2 days, we clearly feel that this is part of the way forward. All right, so we really have demonstrated you can put DHA into a land plant. And again, we see the current pathway. There's the microalgae into the fish, down to the consumers, or into various functional foods with the microalgal oils. But again, we can take the microalgal genes into the crops, feeding the animals into the consumers as the alternate way. We have done some consumer work with our social science groups, and you know, GM does tend to get a little bit exciting in different countries, but what we've found across a number of countries is a large proportion of the population are accepting of the land plant long-chain omega-3 oil from the GM land plant, provided there's a health benefit, provided there's some supporting or evidence of health claims from a trusted source. And at the moment, the consumers are saying they prefer to be indirect consumption, so that is feeding the fish as distinct from direct, whether that'll change or not. So that's a number of papers from the team. All right, so in summary of the land plants, yeah, we have, you know, there clearly is a need that's been stated for the last few days. We have actually now demonstrated, a number of groups have demonstrated EPA, we've certainly demonstrated DHA now, and we're really now into the oilseed crops with excellent progress and various engagement underway in terms of the regulatory and other issues. We're fortunate enough as well, the next stage of this project, the R&D phase, we have a partnership with an Australian multinational, Newseed, working with CSIRO and Grains Research and Development Corporation. That's the farmers essentially paying a levy for their crop, which goes back into helping the research. And our target crop is canola DHA. All right, and it's been quite a journey, and it's quite a large team that has been working on this project, and I really do want to acknowledge everybody there. The project leader is Surinder Singh, based in Canberra. Just a little bit now on signature lipids. I mentioned that early on. Again, you are what you eat. So a lot of marine biologists come to our laboratory to determine diet of marine species. So the marine diet on the left, although that's farmed salmon, which is not what it used to be, versus the other diet on the right. But again, that's just the methodology, but basically the prey species, you're looking at your predators and your various preys with very different profiles. This was an example, US researchers working in our laboratory looking at a deep sea fish, which again, limited data available because You don't get many fish with anything in their guts coming up from 4 kilometres deep, so you can actually use signature lipids to unravel the diet. The interesting thing here, so this is called a rat tail, very cosmopolitan species in the deep ocean. It matched up with squid. So the hypothesis is that, again, because of the changing global fisheries, a lot of the water column species numbers are coming down. There are more and more squid. This is the Humboldt squid taking off, giant Humboldt squid. They actually, very short lifespan, they then sink or die, then sink. And the hypothesis is that that's what the rat tail's now consuming more of, rather than these are all the benthic species that we thought it was going to be consuming. So an interesting aside with signature lipid approach. Okay, then finally, just a little bit of information on the omega-3 centre. There is some, again, a very small version of GOED down in Australia. There are some brochures on the table outside. Kevin Crail is the executive director, and that's the website. So members are made up of food industry, seafood industry, ingredient suppliers and research and development organisations. So Andy Sinclair is the lead scientific advisor. In terms of the role, it's all about communicating the message of the omega-3s, established at a similar date to GOED. And again, really, the overall aim is to improve the health of Australians and New Zealanders. The Omega-3 Centre holds various public symposia, scientific consensus meetings, and reports are put out, which are most of them are available at that website. And thank you very much for your time today.